Words. All right, so are you all ready to get started?
You bet.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to everyone who's tuned in to this exciting webinar this evening. My name is Christopher Lyle. I am the Education and Advocacy Director here at Wolf Park. And I am really excited to welcome Brenden Kennedy and Kim Bean from Wolves of the Rockies to Wolf Park's virtual platform. Whether you are new to the topic of wolf conservation or if you are a seasoned advocate, regardless, you have probably seen the hashtag Relist Wolves campaign over the last year. Kim and Brenden are twinning with their Relist Wolves shirts, which is awesome. I've already requested mine. This campaign has brought a ton of attention to all of the issues that wolves face in the Northern Rocky Mountains and throughout the rest of the United States as well. So I'm really excited to welcome them to the platform. Before we begin, I do want to note that we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the webinar. And we would like you to post your comments to the Q&A box rather than the chat feature. That way we can better keep track of all of the questions as they come in and sort them. If you have any questions during the webinar that would be applicable to what Kim or Brenden will be talking about, they have given me explicit permission to interrupt them and ask if there are any clarifying questions. So if you have anything that needs clarity during the webinar, we may stop and ask that. If not, you will get your question answered at the end of the webinar, or at least we hope so. Depending on how many questions we have, we will try to sort through all of them. This webinar is also being recorded and will be on Wolf Park's YouTube channel within the next 2 days. We are also streaming this live on Facebook on Wolf Park's account. So you can start out this webinar by being a wolf advocate and share it with your friends, your family, or on your overall page to get the word out for wolf conservation. So with that being said, I will turn over the virtual mic to Kim and Brenden.
Amazing. Thank you, Christopher. Diving right in. Kim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kim Bean, and I am the Vice President of Wolves of the Rockies. And as it says, one of the founding members of hashtag Relist Wolves. And I'm just going to make that easy enough and pop it right on over to Brenden.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenden Kennedy. I am a founding member of the Relist Wolves campaign. And historically, my background was actually in fashion marketing and creative services. So one of the things, we'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but that was something that we wanted to do when we started this campaign was look at conservation through a different lens. And that is how I came into the fold.
Happily.
Very happily.
Yeah. So just to kind of explain a little bit more about Wolves of the Rockies and who we are, we started Wolves of the Rockies, Marc Cooke and myself, back in 2012. We came from another advocacy group, but you know, we were in Montana and we really just wanted to fight for a lot of the things that were happening in the Rocky Mountain states. And as our mission statement says, our purpose is to protect and defend the wolves of Yellowstone National Park, which is my heart and soul, and the Rocky Mountains through advocacy and education. And that means looking into coexistence, accepting wildlife, wild animals, mainly predators for me, respecting our wildlife, our wild lands, and one another, and you know, through education. You can go ahead, next one if you would. Fantastic. So there's a statement, and I loved this. If you really care about wildlife, and you have to care about wildlife governance. And I have to give kudos to Kevin Bixby, who actually created that line. I loved it, I stole it, and I will continue to utilize it, but I give it to Kevin. If you love something enough, you have to learn, and this is for wolves and bears and anything else. If you love wildlife, you have to know what's happening with them, who's taking care of them or not managing them. It's really important, because when you dig deep into that, you'll find things that really kind of scare you a little bit maybe, and make you want to speak out. So educating yourself, educating others is really, really important. So Wolves of the Rockies, we are a grassroots organization out of Montana. We literally, our whole point is to educate folks on what is happening in the Rocky Mountain states. That's Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho. Montana being our main staple. Yellowstone National Park, as I said, is my expertise, if you have to call it something. But we communicate, we educate through public education, through social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everything that we can to get the word out to as many people as we can through as many outlets. One of the most important things in advocating for wolves is creating relationships. And we were just talking about this prior to the webinar, and that was sometimes you have to create relationships with people you wouldn't necessarily eat dinner with, right? And the reason is I can sit and talk to folks all day long that believe what I believe, feel what I feel, but am I really going to change anything by doing that? Probably not. So it's very important that we make relationships with folks that we don't know. They don't know us. They don't understand us. So we have to get to know one another and really respect that. So we have friends that are ranchers and we have friends that are hunters. Ethics is a very big thing for that, but it's really important to recognize who other people are and what makes wildlife important to them or not important, so that we can kind of help understand and change each other's views a little bit. And so finding common ground is really, really important. And as it says in the slide, we have to reach across the aisle, or as I like to say, kind of come to the middle of the road a little bit, and really have great conversations with people.
Kim, I have to say, I think that was one of the most striking things for me when I learned of Wolves of the Rockies and started learning more about wolves is how really this is such a core tenet of what you, Marc, and the rest of the Wolves of the Rockies board does, right? Is, you know, I think it's Marc that always says, once you are with someone, you realize that you have more in common with them than you have differences. You just have big differences on this particular issue. It's
so true. I mean, and I think one of the things is, and I think Marc's out here somewhere watching. So, but I think what's really important is, you know, we have a lot of folks that are like, ranchers, damn you. And I'm like, slow your roll. Hold on a second. If we don't have ranches, we have condominiums. We don't have open range. We need ranchers. So whether you're, you know, a meat eater or not, think about other things and other people's livelihoods and the things that they love. And you have to respect that one way or the other. So it's important to make friends in unlikely places. For me, not so unlikely, but it's really important to understand that we all have a place here and you have to respect one another. So yeah, that's just a really important component to creating change is making friends across the aisle. Things that we've been able to do that were successful for us, and it's important for anything, and I cannot stress this enough, wherever you're from, whether it's Michigan, Wisconsin, wherever, you know, Minnesota, where we have wolves, you know, in the Midwest, Indiana, you have to show up for meetings. You have to go and you have to make relationships with your commissioners, whether it's Fish and Game, CDW, whatever your government agency's called. You have to get to know them. You have to show up at commission hearings, and you have to be respectful when you speak about what it is you're concerned about. For us, it's always been wolves, and that need to coexist with them. And why? Bringing science. Everything can't just be heartfelt, although that's important, but you have to bring facts to the table. You have to know what you're talking about. And that goes all the way back to understanding who's governing your wildlife. So showing up is really important, and having numerous people showing up. So you got to get people involved that will go to these meetings, stand up, speak out, and have that collective voice. And it's essential to keep that voice going, as the slide says, building public pressure and providing turnkey actions. collective voices. We are much stronger together than we are individually. And that's, as we'll go forward, our Relist Wolves campaign is really, really proving that. Anything you want to add to that? You're good.
No, I think we're good. So,
Good.
moving into a little bit of the history of where we are, today and how we got here in terms of, the challenges that wolves are facing in the US. Prior to being listed on the Endangered Species Act, wolves were virtually hunted to extinction, with the exception of a small amount of wolves in Minnesota. And our friend Dr. Maureen Hackett from Howling for Wolves always says, Minnesota wolves, just as a quick aside, cannot be on a genetic island, so we really need these wolf populations to rebound. And in 1974, wolves were one of the first species to be protected under the Endangered Species Act. And they were on the endangered species list until 2009, when there was 2008, when there was initial delisting in the Northern Rockies, and then a permanent delisting in the Northern Rockies in 2011. We'll get more into the nuances there in a moment. And then in 2020, wolves were delisted from the endangered species list nationwide. In 2021, the Biden administration announced that they were backing that decision and really doubled down, until shortly after that, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced a 365-day status review of gray wolves in the Northern Rockies specifically. So that started on September 15th, 2021. And then just this year, in February of 2022, a federal judge restored federal protections to wolves in much of the US. This, however, did not affect wolves in the Northern Rockies. And that is where the most egregious hunts are occurring, with up to 90% of wolf populations being slaughtered in these three states. So those, again, Northern Rockies here is Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. You'll see that wolves regain protection in 44 states. And if you do the math, that's only 47. So Hawaii, Alaska are not included in that. And New Mexico has their own governance in terms of wolf management. Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about the nuances in the delistings and what that looks like over time?
Sure, thanks, Brenden. If you look at the 2011, when wolves were delisted in Montana and Idaho, they were delisted on what a rider in the Senate. And what that did was, it literally, the point of that rider was to basically delist wolves in these states, in these two states, and it was Democratic John Tester in Montana, who is still a senator, who pushed this bill. And what it did, though, is it said, hey, guess what? You can't relist these without basically a flip of the pen. We need Congress's approval to do this, unlike anywhere else in the United States. And that was kind of a scary thing that happened. So that's kind of where we're at there. In 2012, Wyoming didn't get delisted in 2011 because they refused to adhere to any of the regulations that were put out there. But in 2012, they got their way, and wolves were delisted there as well. And that's kind of where that's been since.
Can I ask a question? I think it's important for folks to understand too. Yellowstone wolves throughout all of this time are protected as long as they are in the park, correct?
That is true. So yeah, Yellowstone National Park, which resides mostly in Wyoming. So if you look at any of this, the majority of the Wyoming up in the northwestern corner of Wyoming, and a sliver of Montana and Idaho. And yeah, as long, and then you go up into Glacier National Park as well in Montana. And as long as they stay within this invisible boundary, they're safe. The minute they step over that invisible line that they don't see, they're fair game to be killed. And we found that in 2009 even, when they were delisted really quickly, and then relisted again, is that the entire pack, called the Cottonwood Pack of Yellowstone, was killed right outside. I mean, literally on the Yellowstone line. The hunters killed the entire pack. So they were put back on the endangered species list, but it created a wolf management unit called 316, which we can get into a little bit later, obviously. But yeah, they're safe as long as they stay in the park. And that's a problem. Is that where you're going with that? Just to make sure.
Absolutely. And because I think that's just a question that folks have sometimes is, why are Yellowstone wolves not fully protected? And it's because, as you said, that invisible line.
Right. And as we go forward, and you'll know what happened to the Yellowstone wolves this season alone, you'll understand how this works a little bit more. It's kind of a crazy thing. And then we can also get into what Yellowstone wolves also resemble in the state of Wyoming. They actually, are part of Wyoming's numbers, which is kind of interesting. So any wolves that venture outside of Yellowstone National Park are fair game, so to speak, to kill, but they utilize their numbers as part of the amount of wolves that they need to keep on the landscape, which I find kind of repulsive, because they're utilizing wolves that can't be killed. So anything outside of that can be. I don't know how else to explain that, really. You might be able to help me out with that, Brenden, if you wanted to.
No, I think that makes sense. Is that what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that Wyoming, when they're looking at their wolf population, they include Yellowstone wolves in their count, but it's not really fair, because those wolves, number one, really are not specific to Wyoming. It's the whole park, and I realize most of the park is in Wyoming, but the whole park. And number two, they are protected so long as they are in the park.
Correct. And it's a very interesting dynamic that Wyoming has going on there, just because Yellowstone majority. But if you actually really want to look at it, the majority of the wolves, the wolf packs, are up in Lamar Valley. I don't want to say that, that's not actually true, but a lot of the wolves, I should say, are in Lamar Valley, or used to be, and that is in Montana. I'm just going to break this up really quick, because it's a good question that somebody put out in the Q&A, and that's, how can Congress justify the atrocities happening in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming? These animals are being, they're being killed. How is this wolf management? I just want to address that really quick, because I think it's an important question, and it's one that I ask daily and that we fight for daily. Congress isn't, we got to keep getting louder and louder and louder, and we'll get into our Relist Wolves campaign in a little bit. But what it means is that we need more voices. So we need your voice. So when you ask that question, I don't know if they really get it. And that's where we're really feeding our senators and our congressmen and women to understand what's happening. And when we get into what is happening in these states and the different laws that they've actually created this last session in 2021 in Montana and Idaho, I don't know if they're really getting that information as clearly as they should. And so we need more people to make those phone calls to the White House, make those phone calls to their senators, and your state senator, just because maybe they're in, Connecticut or somewhere else, they still have a vote for what happens to our wildlife in these other states. So it's an awful thing, and we need more people to be speaking out, if that makes any sense. I hope I can answer that a little bit better later, but that's kind of where that is. So going forward in 2012, everybody's delisted in the 3 states, and killing begins. And with that, one of the famed Yellowstone wolves, 06, from the Lamar Canyon Pack, she was the alpha female, very famous wolf. She was killed in December of 2012. And her beta male was killed before that. that really propelled us as Wolves of the Rockies into the hemisphere, so to speak, because we helped break that story. And more importantly, we refused to allow her to die in vain. And what I mean by that is we took those relationships that we had been building with commissioners, and we sat down with the commission, and we were able to create a wolf management unit around Yellowstone on the upper edge, called.
I think we have a map of that, Kim.
Am I going too far ahead?
Just one step ahead here. Let me pull it up.
I'm so bad.
Well, I think
I
the
can't help
headline
it.
here is in 2020, wolves were delisted nationwide. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in 2022, a federal decision has reversed that. But wolves in the Northern Rockies and Alaska are still being hunted and slaughtered today.
You get me started on Yellowstone wolves, and
I know, but now's your chance to jump right in.
Can I go? I'm going back, guys. I'm going back to Yellowstone. So we're going to
I think to tee that up, quick graphic content warning. There's just one very old image of wolves prior to the ESA, so you might want to look away for just a couple of minutes. But Kim, before you even get into Wolves of the Rockies and that work, can you give a little bit more background on wolves in the Northern Rockies in general?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, you know, literally back in the 30s and 40s, wolves were literally, they were considered vermin, and they were going to kill everything, all the ungulates and so on and so forth. So they literally hunted them to near extinction. The majority of the United States had wolves in them. And then it just kind of, they killed them all off. They killed them out of Yellowstone National Park. They killed them pretty much everywhere except for pockets of the lower 48, like Minnesota, Michigan, and that. So pre-ESA, they were hunted to near extinction. Through 1974 being put on the ESA, thanks to actually President Nixon to get the ESA out there, a lot of people, a lot of great people for a lot of years worked really hard to push us into the reintroduction of wolves, which were back into Yellowstone National Park and a portion of Idaho. And that was in 1995 and 1996. In Yellowstone National Park, all these animals, all these wolves were actually captured in Canada, about 200 miles-ish over the Montana border. So they're not some deep pocketed 500-pound wolves that some people would like to believe. They've actually kind of come in and out of Montana quite, you know.
And that's exactly why, you know, that asterisk is there is I'm so glad you said that, because you know, when you look at wildlife, very similar to the invisible line of the boundary of Yellowstone National Park, wildlife cannot see sovereign boundaries either, right? So when you're saying 200 miles, they're still a native species.
These wolves travel that in no time, and they have. So these same animals, they are the same wolves that are, you know, that they talk about. Wolves are wolves, gray wolves are gray wolves, timber wolves are still gray wolves. It's the same thing. That's science, okay? But these wolves have dipped in and out of Montana forever, and that's great. So, but in 1995 and 96, they did what they called a hard release in Idaho, which was they dropped them, they opened the cage, and they let them go. And they did a soft release in Yellowstone National Park, where they created 1 acre chain link fence areas right within the park. And they grabbed these animals and they put them in, and they said, we hope for the best. They kept them there in these pens, these acclimation pens, for about 10 weeks-ish, and then open the gates and hope for the best. The purpose of that was they didn't know if the wolves would hit the ground and then go straight back to Canada, or if they would actually hang out and see what happened. Well, both worked. So we're happy to say that was great, and we have some really great wolves in all these areas. So that happened in 1995 and 96, and they had periodic releases in those 2 years. Now we can get into the delisting aspect. Wolves initially delisted in 2008. 2009, like I said, we had the cottonwood pack that was killed on the Yellowstone border, which pushed forward reluctantly from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks and that to put in a wolf management unit called 316 on the northern edge of Yellowstone National Park. And then they fully delisted in 2011, which from USFWS said, okay, delistings there, we give state management now. Well, the state of Montana, we'll just go with that, the state of Montana and Idaho also said, we're going to manage wolves as we manage any other creature. We're going to manage them as we do anybody else or anything else. That's a key statement. That's not what they did. Well, there's a 5-year oversight from the Fed. So the federal government says, we're going to keep an eye on you for 5 years. So these states did what they were supposed to do for that 5 years. And then guess what happened in 2016, 2017? Once that happened, they started managing them a little bit differently and got a little more heavy-handed with the way they were doing things. So that brings us a little bit forward. And each year they brought a little bit more tools to the table on how to kill wolves and predators. In 2020, they were emboldened by the federal delisting. Political environment, I think, had a lot to do with it as well. That they literally, these states adopted a lot of different measures to kill wolves. And Idaho's always been kind of like the big brother of how to kill. They have they came up with the SSS, which is called shoot, shovel, and shut up method of killing wolves. And that is basically poaching. And yeah, that goes back to some pretty grisly times back in the mid 2000s and continues today. But Idaho or Montana in 2020 legislative session has some legislators that brought some bills to the table that literally allows night hunting, baiting, so they can bait wolves out of wherever they want, Yellowstone National Park if they choose, but they can bait. They can use denning, meaning they can kill pregnant mothers, they can kill puppies. There's multiple things that have come out, and it's literally considered just a war on wolves in these states, and they were doing it. Their purpose is, as they said, we want to kill up to 85–90% of the wolves in the state because we have too many wolves.
Wow.
That's kind of hard to believe just by the way they are counting them, which is a mathematical equation. So that's kind of the hard part, but that's moving forward. That's Idaho started their killing spree in July this year, July 1st. Montana had theirs starting on September 4th. All this went forward with the crazy bills that these states put out there. We, our voices as advocates and numerous groups out there said, hey, Fed, you guys got to stop, man. This is insane, right? There's no ethics in this. There's no conservation in this. There's no looking at science, no science-based, nothing. And economically speaking, it's ridiculous. Wolves are worth a lot more alive than they are dead. Just look at the economics of Yellowstone National Park and the surrounding areas. So that prompted Fish, Wildlife and Wildlife Services to trigger a status review. So what that does is it gives them a full year to see what's happening in these states. And that's where we're at today, is waiting for that status review. But we don't want to wait. We need these wolves relisted at this point. But they did turn around and relist in 44 states. But that doesn't include 3.
That's an important takeaway here too, Kim, is that there have been, I think now, a few petitions, if I'm not mistaken, for an emergency relisting, and there was
Yeah.
really no reason that an emergency relisting could not have happened concurrently with the status review. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Brenden. I mean, truly. So what an emergency, if anybody doesn't understand this, we were begging for an emergency relisting because it's a slaughter. When you're snaring, I don't know if anybody's ever seen what a snare does to an animal. It's the most horrific. I mean, I think about it and it just messes me up because it's the most horrendous thing you'll ever see. But a snare is the most disturbing way to die. Some of these people who like snaring, some trappers, that do snaring, they say, it's quick. I have a very good friend of mine by the name of Carter Niermeyer who knows trapping better than pretty much anybody out there. And he'll tell you straight up, snaring is the most disturbing, horrible way to die. And 50% of these animals do not die right away. But it's a metal wire that goes around the neck. And the more you struggle, the tighter it gets, the tighter it gets, the tighter it gets. What happens though is they thing called jellyhead. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I want you to understand how horrible this is. And this is an implementation in these states. This is how they're killing a lot of these wolves. But what it does is there's a thing called jellyhead. And what it does is you don't die and you don't stop breathing so much, but all that blood just continues to push up into the head until it swells and it swells. And you cannot tell what that face looks like anymore. I ask you to go look it up because I want you to understand this is disturbing. There is nothing ethical about killing any animal this way. And the bycatch is insurmountable. Our friends, Casey York with Trap Free Montana just put something out on Facebook today with a mountain lion that got caught in a snare.
There's a lot of unwanted, unintentional collateral damage in forms of other wildlife.
Lions, bears, we're concerned. We have grizzly bears waking up right now. What's going to happen when somebody stumbles across a grizzly bear that's stuck in this neck snare that's not going to tighten down that easily? I want to see you release that. So all these horrendous bills, I mean, snaring is just disturbing. Being able to hunt at night with night vision, all these different things is just, it's out of control. So
these are all arguments for an emergency relisting, right? And what would that entail?
So an emergency relisting says, we need to stop. We need to look what's going on in these states. So we're going to take 240 days. This is what the Fed should be doing. We're going to take 240 days to see what's going on and why these states are not managing the wolves the way they said they would. They're managing them as vermin. They are not managing them as a quote unquote manageable species. So that 240 days would be from the date that they said, here it is, and then they do this status, through that status review. We don't know why they did that outside of a political need. So that's kind of a scary thing. So that's why we're really pushing for the relisting. We need them relisted to keep these states from continuing to do what they are doing, which is trying to decimate what's there.
Absolutely.
And Kim and Brenden, while you're still on the slide, we have a couple of questions that might be pertinent.
Sure.
One is, which year exactly was the entire pack killed when they stepped outside the Yellowstone National Park border?
So Rose, to answer that question, that was 2009. That was a cottonwood pack, and the hunters just mowed that pack down. The majority of the pack were killed by bullets.
But another pack was killed just this year.
So this year, yes, that there was a lot of wolves killed this year in Yellowstone. 25 to 30% of the wolves in Yellowstone are gone. And that's disturbing. One pack specifically was killed right outside. Most of these animals were killed in Unit 313. So we'll have to discuss that right there in a second. But yes, a wolf pack was killed, and I don't know why my brain is still stuck on the cottonwood pack, but
was it Phantom Lake?
The Phantom Lake pack. Thank you so much for pulling me out of that one. The Phantom Lake pack was killed. We lost numerous members of the Junction Butte pack. We've lost I mean, there's numerous packs that have lost wolves. The Wapiti Lake pack, this pack right behind me, my favorite pack on the whole of the planet, has lost so many members. The Junction Butte, I don't even know. They're, I mean, awful. There's just so many packs that have lost so many members and are just in disarray. And that's simply because of bloodthirst for these specific animals in the park. So yeah, very important.
And you
Was
may
there
be
another question?
Yeah, you may be answering this later, but someone else is wondering who exactly is doing this killing. Is it wealthy trophy hunters or ranchers, other hunters?
Actually, that's such a great question. And this is one of my biggest rants on the planet. I want everybody to recognize something, and I'm going to go off, so pull me back. Outfitters are really big. Outfitters, trappers, people who hate wolves. Those are the ones that are killing them. Ethical hunters are not the ones that are necessarily taking these wolves. A lot of these guys say, you know, I buy the wolf tag because I'm out there, but I'm not looking for them. I'm looking for elk. I'm looking for deer. I'm looking for sustenance. But these guys will literally, especially around Yellowstone National Park, they have such a bloodthirst. It's bizarre, but they will drive these roads up and down, up and down, up and down all day long. I know there's a lot of illegal activity that they're doing to pull these wolves out of the park. We know this. We can't do anything about it at this point. We're trying, but a lot of them are outfitters. They want them gone. In the states of Montana and Idaho, Wyoming probably as well, outfitters, it's called Montana's Outfitters and Guides Association, MOGA. They are definitely running the show in Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Governor Gianforte, he himself, who's the governor of Montana, he illegally trapped and killed one of these wolves right behind my head, Wapiti Lake pack wolf. He was slapped on the wrist for doing that. It was illegal. And he just killed, illegal kill, it was legal, a mountain lion who was a research mountain lion, had a collar, he had it treed, and he killed it. So he loves these outfitters. And one of the outfitters that was with him helped him do both. So they are in charge. They want these animals gone. And it's all about our public resources are under attack. And it's about commercializing just that. So outfitters are the biggest
I think
problem.
it's important to point out too that in at least in Montana,
Yeah.
in addition to the numbers that are reported as part of the wolf hunt,
Yeah.
there are wolves that are killed by wildlife services.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So wildlife services will take out quite a few. Usually they call it for ranchers or whatever that are saying problem wolves. So if a wolf kills a cow, they will go in, kill the wolf, but 9 times out of 10, they'll take the whole pack. They'll try to kill more wolves than just the one that took it. But on that, let's put some perspective. And I want to preface this by saying, nobody wants to lose a cow. I understand that. This is their livelihood. They love their cattle. I get it. 100%. I'm not advocating for that. But there are about 2.6 million cattle on the landscape in Montana. My friend John will correct me on this, but I believe a total, and this is cows, sheep, and I believe in guard dogs, anything like that. I believe 81 animals in the state of Montana were killed by wolves last year. That's 81 out of 2.6 million cattle. And even more when you put sheep and everything else in there. There's another thing that I want to point out. In the state of Montana, ranchers get paid 3 times the going rate. In other words, they call it a 3-time multiplier. So money may not be, they're not losing money as some would claim, but it is part of their livelihood. So I respect that. But wolves are not going out and decimating anything. Okay, just to put that out there to be clear. So, we need to recognize that we still need to respect livelihoods, but nobody's losing money, and these animals aren't being decimated. So what, where was I going here on this? I'm trying to read all these to try to get everybody.
So I think at this point, unless there's anything else
I don't think
Chris
so.
foresees, I think we've teed up really what, a little bit more of the history of wolves in the Northern
All right.
Rockies. And I would love to hear, I think we would like to share what some of the successes have been from in advocacy prior to 2020, and then get into why that no longer works. And if anyone had gone to a different screen for the graphic content, it is now on a different slide.
There you go. So yeah, thanks, Brendan, keeping me on track. God, I told you I wasn't doing this without you. I have a tendency to go down a rabbit hole, and you have to grab me by my toenails to pull me back out because I won't stop. So yeah, I'm good at tooting the horn of Wolves of the Rockies simply because we have been really advocating for so long and done such good work where we've had to. And honestly, it started because we had some really good people in office in Montana. Montana wasn't always a red state. We had some Democratic governors, and they appointed some really good commissioners. So people who had biology degrees and understood the lay of the land. So we were able to make really have great relationships with people across the aisle, and to create relationships with these commissioners, which helped us really move forward with good logical laws or ways of going about stuff. So we had that ability in 2012, 2013. After 06 was killed, we were able to get, and if you can see at the bottom of this map, you can see WMU 313 and 316. Those are the areas. Thank you so much, Brenda. 313 is the one that we were able to help put into place to help save our Yellowstone wolves, which is right below that. And that was really, really important. But again, the reason why we were able to have the successes we did have, and that means literally killing bills in the Senate, because there were a lot of crazy bills going through, or lessening the impact of these. All those things came about because we had really, really sound commissioners. And we created, again, great relationships with that. And we had Democratic governors. They looked at different things. They looked at the importance of the economics of the wolves. They looked at conservation. They looked at, as it even says, the ecological and social impacts. We had phenomenal people that were at the helm of management with the commission outside of FWP. So that was really, really, really is what helped us propel our advocacy forward. Looking at that today and the difference between then and now, we have, as I had mentioned earlier, we have a governor who is a trophy hunter. He's illegally killed a wolf, and just took a mountain lion who's a research mountain lion from Yellowstone. He has appointed his commission, and he now has 7 commissioners instead of 5. Out of those commissioners, we have trappers, we have outfitters, we have ranchers, we have trophy hunters. One happens to have her own trophy hunting TV show, I think. Ranchers. So we have one biologist on the commission, and he is left over from the previous administration, the previous Democratic administration. Just one. Everybody else is all about killing. And they were appointed by Governor Gianforte. That does not mean that they want to talk to us, right? But with all this stuff that they've pushed forward, because they have to kill all these wolves, they claim we have about 1,150 wolves in the state of Montana. They still, and wolf, the season just ended on the 15th of March. They were still killed 273 of our wolves. We do believe we have far less than what they said. And I think the number kind of shows that, right? If there were these wolves running rampant across the state of Montana, as they claim, I do believe that number would have been much higher, given all the tools in the tool shed that they have. And believe me, folks, it's not just these horrendous bills they passed in 2021. They've collected tools throughout the last 10 years. So it's really difficult to create change when the state has created such a special interest collective of commissioners and the folks that are in legislation, right? The legislation has plenty of people up there that are special interests that have created these bills, trappers, outfitters, etc. They create the bills and they push them through. So everything that has occurred has truly emboldened these states to do anything and everything they want to do. And our wildlife is paying dearly for it.
Yeah, and the screen grab here is from the Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks wolf harvest dashboard. And honestly, we pulled this graphic in from our friends at the Wolf Conservation Center because the words that we use matter. We really hate the word harvest. It's a euphemism used to mask what is actually happening. But the season closed at 273 wolves that were killed by hunters. So that does not include, as we mentioned earlier, the wolves that were killed by wildlife services.
And don't forget, trapping, snaring, night hunting, no ethics, no conservation, no science, and absolutely no economic value for doing what they've done. Just want to put that out there. So,
hey, Kim, can you also define what an outfitter is?
I can. Outfitters are folks that get paid to bring people in. So say some guy from, and I hate doing this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Some rich guy from New York City says, I want to go kill the prize elk. They pay an outfitter an exorbitant amount of money. In some cases, I mean, I've heard of upwards of $50,000 to get this prize elk. And they'll come in, they'll pay outfitters. Outfitters know the land where they hunt, and they take these people in there for all this kind of cash and get paid to do it. And so they're paid guides, I guess, to speak, but they'll you hear about it even in lion hunts over in Africa, where they'll actually, take people out to do stuff like that. But it just almost a guarantee to get the prized wolf or the prized elk or what have you. So that's what an outfitter is.
We wanted to touch briefly on the state of play in Idaho and Wyoming. So, you see this graphic here that says 452 wolves were slaughtered in Idaho that we put up on the Wolves of the Rockies account in late December. Mm-hmm. Something to note here is when you're looking at Idaho versus Montana, it's very difficult to compare apples to apples. And the reason being is that Idaho has much less transparency in their reporting, and that's intentional. So part of what's happening is Idaho actually, in many cases, the atrocities against wolves are even more egregious than what happened in Montana and Wyoming. But the way that they report, the way that we can get information is so much more nuanced that it's hard to share that information back out with folks. You have anything to add to that, Kim?
Yeah, so when you look at Idaho, and I'll just do this briefly because I know we're running out of time, but 452 wolves slaughtered in Idaho. That number starts in January of the year and goes throughout the year. Montana, they look at it and they say our killing started in September and ended in March. So what you're seeing here is basically 2 hunting seasons in Idaho, right? Versus Montana, which is a single hunting season. The numbers are very similar. Also, Idaho starts their hunting season earlier.
And it lasts almost all year, is that correct?
Correct. Well, no, they can trap on private lands year round in Idaho, but they will stop the hunt for now.
And in Wyoming, I think we actually touched on this a little bit earlier, but Wyoming counts Yellowstone wolves in their count.
That's right.
What is the Wyoming wolf hunting season look like?
So they close most of their stuff. 85% of Wyoming is year round. They consider wolves vermin in 85% of the Wyoming. Now, are you going to see a lot of wolves in that area? Maybe, maybe not, right? They're pretty much concentrated up in the Yellowstone, Grand Tetons area, and kind of in that direction up there. Yes, they are being killed further down outside of that kind of polarized area. There are certain areas that are closed at the end of December, but some hunting units, which are up around Yellowstone National Park, that are open until the end of the month, March.
And another key takeaway here is, we talk a lot about Yellowstone wolves, and I think one of the reasons is because they are some of the most protected and cherished wolves in the nation, if not the world, right? So,
yeah.
It's virtually impossible to talk about why the Northern Rocky region without talking about the Yellowstone wolves. And if 30% of one of the most protected populations in the world was slaughtered in one season, imagine what's happening in the rest of these states.
Poaching is alive and well, y'all. Poaching is alive and well. And I want you to understand that they feel very emboldened to do whatever they want because they are getting away with this stuff in these states. And it's true. If we can't save Yellowstone's wolves, we're not going to be able to save any. And so these are a protected wolf, and we've literally lost between 25 and 30% of them. And that's pretty sad.
So in response to all of this, the Relist Wolves campaign was born. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the campaign now. And the campaign was formed in June 2021. And it's really an informal coalition of conservationists, different NGOs, nonprofits, many of whom are on this webinar today, strategists, private citizens, all working together toward a common goal. And that goal is to relist wolves. We really try to focus on issue over organization. So, it's not, Wolves of the Rockies was one of the founding members of the Relist Wolves campaign and a key partner of ours. But it's, you'll notice if you go to the relistwolves.org site, it's really all about the issue and not a singular organization. So that we can focus on the action. So we're not, forced to focus on other things like fundraising, but driving action. And then all of those actions lead to putting pressure on the White House and Department of Interior, and obviously U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service falls under Department of Interior with our tactics that focus on science, ethics, and tribal treaty rights. Quickly here, you'll see an overview, and this is also available on relistwolves.org, all of the different organizations that are part of the campaign and working together to, again, relist wolves and just bring more attention to this issue in a concerted effort. And then in addition to that, we have tribal partners. So these hunts in the Northern Rockies and when hunts were happening elsewhere from 2020 to the beginning of this year, they were doing so without the input of tribal nations. And many tribal nations view the wolves as sacred. And President Biden, when he entered office, was wanting to put out a memorandum that said that government agencies had to consult tribes before making decisions, which tribes were not consulted on the delisting of the gray wolf. And what's concerning about this is that, tribes have been are consulted on many other issues, but when you're talking about sovereign nation to sovereign nation, these issues really can't be cherry picked. And the fact that the administration has withheld that position from previous administrations on this particular issue is very worrisome. In addition to that, in September of last year, the day before U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced the status review, leaders representing nearly 200 tribal nations in the U.S. sent a letter to Secretary Holland, urging her to enact an emergency relisting under the umbrella of tribal consultation. To date, that letter has not been responded to. So in addition to our partners, the campaign focuses on three main areas: science, ethics, and tribal treaty rights, which I just spoke about. Ethics, I think Kim has talked a lot about this throughout the course of the conversation. But again, just the headline here is that what is happening is unethical and egregious. And, you know, a lot of ethical hunters even disagree with what's happening in these states. And then science. So one key takeaway here is that while wolves technically met their recovery goals across the US, those recovery goals were set in 1978, and they're woefully inadequate. They did not account for things like climate change and loss of habitat, or frankly, you know, the tumultuous political environment that we live in today. We are pushing for non-lethal coexistence plans. And then additionally, wolves really do serve as ecosystem guardians. So, you know, trying to explain to folks that when, you know, these predators are really necessary for healthy ecosystems to thrive. And, you know, when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone, it actually changed the patterns of the grazing patterns of many elk and deer, and it allowed river willows to flourish again in the riverbed, which actually brought beavers back into the rivers, which helps us control water. So it's all interconnected, and that is just, you know, a microcosm, really a macrocosm example of why biodiversity is so important in these cases. And we do a lot of work to debunk myths. A couple of these we addressed already, that the federal government consulted all relevant stockholders. That was not the case, especially in terms of tribal treaty rights. You know, that wolves are responsible for cattle deprivation. In actuality, it's between 1% and 2% of unwanted livestock losses are caused by wolves. And there's a great graphic here from, again, our friends at the Wolf Conservation Center of all of the other causes that lead in terms of unwanted livestock losses. That, you know, elk populations have been decimated. In actuality, elk populations are thriving in Montana and Idaho. A couple others, you know, that science is determining the state wolf quotas. Kim touched on this example happening in Montana, and it's happening elsewhere. But these quotas are ignoring the recommendation from biologists. And in the case of Wisconsin earlier this year, or I'm sorry, last year, the Department of Natural Resources Board actually completely ignored the recommendation from the department's and state's own biologists. And then we also touched on this already, that wolves are a foreign species to Idaho and Montana. They're not. So a core tenet of our campaign, as we've been talking about this really throughout, is reaching a new audience. So we've really worked tirelessly to raise awareness for wolves. You know, we collaborate on op-eds, we pitch stories, social media, and we focus on succinct, digestible information. So, you know, in this webinar, we're talking about the nuances between the delistings as we bring folks into the issue. You know, originally we were trying to just keep it really understandable and providing turnkey, clear, simple calls to action that are easy for anyone to do. And we'll have a moment later, but please, if you have not already, Go to relistwolves.org, hit the take action button, and it takes less than 2 minutes. We've gotten folks, celebrity mentions from folks like Alicia Silverstone, Jason Momoa, Carole King, Josh Brolin, and more. So again, just trying to use our networks and get the word out to as many people as possible, and have helped replaced op-eds or pieces in a ton of publications, including The Hill, where a lot of politicians use that as a primary news source, Washington Post, New York Times, Grist, now this, which helps us hit a younger audience and more. And you'll see some examples here. A great piece in the Washington Post that actually featured our own Kim Bean, trying to just get folks to share content that is impactful and beautiful and they get excited about, but also not shying away from things like graphic content, because we really believe that folks need to see what is happening. Something else that we did early on in the campaign, just this last November, was a film with Jason Momoa, which we will show you now. A quick trigger warning: there are gunshots and hunting of wolves, and there are some dead wolves that are shown here. So please turn away for exactly 1 minute if that is worrisome to you.
Wolves embody the wild spirit in us all. They defend our ecosystems, inspire our culture, and even became our best friends. But right now, wolves need our help.
I got him. You shot yourself a wolf, buddy.
Wolves in the crosshairs.
The administration removed gray wolves from the endangered list.
States expanding wolf
kill
hunting.
an unlimited number of wolves.
Using drones, four-wheelers,
trapping them, killing wolf pups in their dens,
paying people to shoot them.
It's like vengeance on wolves.
But we have the power to stop the slaughter by putting the gray wolf back on the endangered species list.
We are calling on the Biden administration to relist gray wolves.
The gray
relist wolves before it's too late.
Go to relistwolves.org and raise your voice for the wolves.
So that's just one example of ways that we're trying to break out of the traditional conservation echo chamber. And now I think is the perfect time to answer the question, what can you do? So the first is take action on relistwolves.org. It's a really turnkey tool that we have where you can send a letter to your representatives and ask them to ask the Department of Interior to relist wolves. Number two, follow Wolves of the Rockies social handles and those of our partners. So that's at Wolves of the Rockies on Instagram, at Wolves _of_the _Rockies on Instagram, and the same on Facebook. Other accounts that we work closely with, Howling for Wolves, Wolf Conservation Center, Apex Protection Project, Peace for Animals, Oceanic Preservation Society, Racing Extinction, World Animal News, the list goes on, Wolf Park. And if you need any other inspiration for organizations to take a look at, please check out our partner page on relistwolves.org. The next thing is spread the word. This will only work if we break out of the conservation echo chamber. We need regular folks. We need the people in the coffee shop. We need the fashion guy. We need all walks of life to continue to build this message and to get more actions taken so that we can succeed in relisting wolves and continue to put political pressure on Washington. And then if you still need more to do, we have a tab on relistwolves.org/do more, where you can write letters directly to Department of Interior. You can call, and we even have a couple of different toolkits in there for petitions and things like that for you to check out.
Yeah, educate yourselves, folks. Educate yourselves. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. You can reach out to me directly, Kim at wolvesoftherockies.org. Listen to our podcast. I have a podcast out there called All Things Wolf and Wild. We're trying to get the information out write your letters, call the Biden administration, call Deb Haaland, don't let up. They hear us. And at some point in time, they will have to act. So silence is deafening, but your words resonate. So don't give that up.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you, Brenden, for this incredible webinar. This was really helpful for everyone tonight to learn a little bit more about the wolves of the Rockies, what you all do, an update on those populations. We have tons of questions to answer, it looks like. The chat box has been going nuts, which is great to see all of that engagement. But keep in mind, if you did ask a question in the chat box, you may want to write it in the Q&A as well, so we make sure we see it so it didn't get buried. I also do want to echo again that please just take action before you log off of this webinar tonight. Before we start the Q&A, just take a couple seconds and go follow Wolves of the Rockies on Instagram or Facebook. Get the Relist Wolves page pulled up, the website, so that you can go sign a petition immediately after logging out. Everybody can make a difference tonight before they leave this program. And of course, you can also follow Wolf Park. We are Wolf Park, Indiana on most of our platforms, and we are going to be elevating the Relist campaign or Relist Wolves campaign as much as we can. But now for some Q&A. Thank you, Kim, for being on it and sorting through some of those as well as we're going along. We do have a couple questions. It looks like specifically about the Fish and Wildlife Service and their role in all of this. So it might be good to start with that. We have a question about why they are standing with the delisting and if there are leftover anti-wolf actors still working there from previous administrations, and also how long are commissioners appointed to the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Oh God, where's Marc when I need him? Marc, if you're still out there, man, the commissioner thing really confuses me because I believe they have like 2 years and then it goes through another scenario. So Marc, if you're on here, please help me answer that question really quick. Commissioners are appointed. They should have to go through a Senate process and all that, but some of them don't. It seems like they can just be put on the and pushed through. So yeah, I'm sorry. I will try to get you an answer though, because that gets confusing. Marc's the man of the hour with that one. So maybe he can answer that out here somewhere.
For sure. We'll be looking for his comment. And then I would love to hear you talk a little bit too, because we had some questions kind of on the edge of this topic. I would love for you to talk just a little bit about the impact of ecotourism, specifically wolf ecotourism, on the Yellowstone economy and how these hunts might have affected that.
Yeah, we have a lot of friends that are inside the park, and you know, I've got great friends that are photographers and guides and so on and so forth. And I've got to be honest with you, just being somebody who spends as much time as I do in Yellowstone, the majority of the people, it's a year-round thing for Yellowstone. Wolves are, you know, they're a big to see them right now. I mean, it's mating season starting in January-ish, February, March. So it's really a great time to see them against the white backdrop of you know, Lamar Valley and all that. So people are there year round. And if we were able to, a few years ago when we had great commissioners, we were able to take commissioners into the park and show them wolves. And one of our greatest supporters as a commissioner was a rancher. And this thing he did, he didn't care one way or the other really, but he came in and he looked at this long line of scopes and lenses. And when you see 600 millimeter lenses, 500 millimeter lenses, I've got Swarovski scopes and so on and so forth. That's a lot of money, right? These people are spending a lot of money in this state. So yes, losing 30% of wolves is going to impact quite a bit. I know they are working on numbers right now. Just we are actually, Relist Wolves campaign is actually working on numbers and just how impactful that is. Doug Smith had stated that this hunt alone will knock back the science aspect of this at least 4 to 5 years, just this one season. So what's going to happen next season, right? That's a huge thing. I tell people, Mark just answered, so I'll answer that other question in a minute. But we're going to see, we tell people all the time, don't boycott Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. Don't do that. That's what they want. They don't want you here, right? We want you to come in, but I want you to tell people when you make that phone call to make that reservation for that hotel, you make that reservation, you ask them straight up, I'm coming out there. I've got this much money I'm spending. These are the many days, blah, blah, blah. Let them go through the spiel and then say, how do you feel about wolves and predators? And the minute they say, we don't like them, that was a whole lot of money you just lost. I'm going to go somewhere else because I'm coming out there to see them and my money's good and it's green. Make sure you let people know, but don't boycott. Not right now. We need you here and we need your voices. So that's really important. I can go back really quick because Mark had just said it. 4-year appointments, Gian Forte appointed 6 of the 7 commissioners. So thanks, Mark. Appreciate that.
Awesome. And then I see you answered some of them via typing, but in case other people had these questions as well, no worries. I'll bring up just a couple of these. One person was wondering in Wyoming, can they utilize any of the same methods as Idaho and Montana?
Yeah, Karen, that was a great question. Wyoming's pretty quiet in how they manage things. They still trap. They still do all these things. They're still hunting. They're doing all that. They also like to use a thing called snowmobiles to mow down predators, because that's neat. Literally, they will chase down these predators and either run them over, hit them, bury them. It's disgusting. You'll see these snowmobiles coming through town where they're just, the whole front of them is bloody. I am being graphic because I think you need to understand that. So yeah, they're Wyoming's quiet, but they're bloody for sure.
We also had a question about potentially buying up wolf tags to prevent hunters from using them, and
no,
change that way.
Don't do that. What you're doing, you can buy as many wolf tags as you want. It does not, there's not this bucket, right? Every wolf tag you buy goes to some semblance of management. They collar them. They'll use Judas wolves that way. That's not how it works. If there was a bucket full and we wanted to buy them all up, absolutely, but that's not how it works.
And then we have another question that just came in that says, is Montana and other northern Rockies states taking federal land and moving it to the state? How are they doing that? Is that how they're trying to commercialize our public lands?
Bonnie, that is one of the most beautiful questions for me to answer, but we're going to need an entire new webinar for that. The answer is very, very much yes. What happens is there's different things called the American Land Grab, American Land Coalition, very much a Koch brothers gig. There are certain senators and Republicans, representatives in the state of Montana that are really big with ALC. And that is literally, they say, feds can't afford to take care of our public land, so the states need to buy it so that we can take care of it. We can rake the lands, that kind of a thing, right? What happens is that they take the lands from us, they put them in states' hands, then they sell them to the highest bidder. We really need to understand this is a true war on our public resources, folks. It affects me. It affects backpackers, hikers, hunters, anybody who recreates, anybody who loves to go out and watch the birds, watch wolves. It affects all of us. It is a real war, and that is a real thing. And yeah, we need to fight for that. We need to keep public lands in public hands, and that takes every voice.
Awesome. And then we had a question, can you talk about the business coalition around Yellowstone?
I can't, it's not mine. So no, I can't comment about that. I think a lot of the business coalition that is happening, the only thing I can say is reach out to them. I think they want to do a lot of good things around the park, but just specifically around the park. So yeah, please reach out to them.
And then one question specifically about wolves and Yellowstone. during the 1995 to 1996 reintroduction. Were there any wolves born during that period? Someone is remembering Wolf 21 and Yellowstone being tagged as a pup.
That's some really in-depth kind of stuff, John. With a beautiful thing, and they're great stories, but I suggest you read books out there. There's numerous books to read to give you some really great insight. One of them is Decade of the Wolf by Doug Smith. To me, that's probably one of the best books to read that will give you just how everything happened. And then all of Rick McIntyre's books will give you all that as well. So wolves were born in these acclimation pens, or were pregnant. They got pregnant in the acclimation pen, number 9 and number 10. Greatest wolves ever, in my opinion. They really created a lot of stuff and great wolves that came out of there. Wolf 10, just to let you know, left the park and was killed by McKintrick. They had the McKintrick rule now. He literally killed him through the collar in the base of the river at the base of his house. And they found Wolf 10, who was an amazing wolf and great story. Please read Decade of the Wolf. That's one of the greatest stories in there. Hanging from a tree headless. So McKittrick ended up 2 years in jail for that, blah, 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 blah. That goes on and on and on with multiple stories about the wolves that were born around that time frame. But
Kim, you've mentioned Doug a couple of times. Can you just quickly touch on who Doug is?
So sorry, besides the greatest man alive in my heart, right? Doug Smith is actually, he is the Wolf Project leader and head biologist for the Wolf Project in Yellowstone National Park. He has created more science that we can utilize, and we do utilize, than anybody else ever has. And he is a true scientist and a wonderful, wonderful guy.
And Christopher, I saw a question that was answered in chat, but I wanted to quickly address it. The question was, is the comment period still open for the status review? Yes. And this is the simple answer is yes. Our understanding is that the best date to get comments in by was January 31st. So that is why we stopped pushing that action as much. But technically, they will accept comments through the end of the status review is our understanding. Again, it feels a little intentionally ambiguous there.
Yeah.
And I will drop that link into the status review in the chat because we have actually taken it down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we did. Sorry, Brenden.
No, it's a little bit more of a complicated process, but we absolutely encourage folks to do it. And I just checked earlier today, it's up to 93,000 comments, which is
keep going. Send them in, man. Get them in still. Get them in still. The louder we get, the better we are. So important.
Absolutely. And one kind of final question then to, I think, wrap things up, because we are getting close to our time, is someone's asking basically how they can keep their cool when all of this is happening, if they are a person that really cares about animals and wolves. And so both of you, because you work on the advocacy front for wolf conservation, it can be really kind of dark and depressing sometimes. Do either of you have any advice for how people can stay cool, calm, collected, and keep fighting the good fight without getting too overwhelmed?
Oh, Brenden, you better go, because I'm considered a pit bull.
I got it. So I firmly believe in taking that energy and honing it into action and really doing whatever you can to just channel all of that rage into raising awareness, helping introduce new folks to the issue so that we can ultimately put a stop to it, because we're not going to be able to do that unless we can break out of the echo chamber. Another thing that I think is really important to remember is that in terms of wolf advocacy, we're on the same side, and organizations do different tactics, and you might not always agree with the tactic or have a suggestion, and just remembering that we're all in the good fight together, I think can help make a big difference sometimes. But really channeling that energy into the right thing and helping to raise awareness. And you're going to get upset. You're going to have rage, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just use it in the right way.
Don't get mad, get effective. I think that's it. And it's hard to do. And I also think that if you're fighting, and I call it fringe fighting, and we'll try to hurry this up, Christopher, I know we're there, but fringe fighting, if you're trying, it's like talking to me, right, about wolves, you're not going to change my mind because I'm already there. And you're not going to talk this guy over here who loathes them and he's salivating because he wants to kill them. You're not going to get anywhere. So don't argue with the guy. You need to find those people that are in that middle that just don't know, right? Those are the people you want to engage. Don't engage this guy. Don't do it, because then it's ugly.
And embrace when people have questions, right, Kim?
Yes.
It's
yes.
Not every, especially on social media, it sometimes it's very hard to tell tone, and sometimes a question really is just a question.
Yeah, I'm open to any questions and every question. If I can't answer it, as you see, I'll be like, Mark or somebody else, Casey, help me out. But it's really important to open up to everybody, because like he said, you may get somebody that's a hunter and you want to just be mad at him, and it's like, stop, relax. It's not personal. That's another thing. It's not personal. Don't take it that way. But be effective, y'all. Be effective.
I love it. That is a great note to end on and sign off on. Thank you so much again, Kim and Brenden, for joining us tonight, giving this amazing presentation. And to everyone still watching, thank you for joining. Please share this webinar if you enjoyed it with your friends and family and social media platforms. We will, again, have it on YouTube within the next couple of days. It was also on our Facebook Live. So go share that. Go follow Wolves of the Rockies. Go to relistwolves.org and make some action. And go follow Wolf Park. We're at Wolf Park, Indiana on just about every platform as well. The more we collaborate, the more we are going to get done. So thank you all and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for that.